Hello, everyone, and welcome to the month of December. Wow, it is the preseason to 2026 at the time of this recording. So, of course, we want to help you make sure that you make the most of it. So, today we're here talking about leading as yourself. It's going to be something that is very crucial to your success as we move forward, whether you're in corporate, whether you're an entrepreneur, or whether you're just maintaining a family. All of this that we're talking about today will be relevant to you. And I have my special guest, Khalilah. I'm going to let you introduce yourself because you can do it better than I can. So go ahead, Khalilah.
All right, Jevon. Thank you so much for inviting me here. My name's Khalilah Pitt. I reside in Tampa, Florida, originally from North Carolina, but I have been serving the YMCA organization for the last 18 years, and the last four specifically in learning and leadership development. I'm also the founder of KP Connects LLC, which is a consulting firm that is really focused on emerging leaders, like those folks that are transitioning from individual contributor to now an organizational leader, and you're leading other people. That's a sweet spot for me. But I have been an athlete. I've been a school teacher. I taught middle schoolers for about 6 years. So I'm one of those crazy folks that enjoy that age range. And then I also spent about 25 years as a volleyball coach, an athletic coach, and I ended that stint as a master coach and coaching for USA Volleyball in their high
Wow.
performance program. So, but the through line through all of that is really just supporting people to reach their goals and desires and the potential that they see for themselves. So, and sometimes helping them realize some things about themselves that
Absolutely.
they didn't know.
Hey, and that's why we're having this conversation, right? Because it's going to take if you are to lead yourself, you got to be willing to realize some things about yourself and introspect. So, before we even begin, what does that even mean to lead as yourself? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, for me, it really meant understanding and recognizing and celebrating all of my identities that are in this body, and how those identities have led to the lived experiences that really fuel like how I approach learning and leadership development. And so, I think it's really important to know thyself,
Yes.
as the old adage goes. And so, I usually introduce myself through my embodied identities, because I want to ground myself in where I came from, who my people are, and all of those things. So I always introduce myself as saying that I'm a Black Indigenous woman in her late 40s, that I am the daughter of newspaper publishers that published a Black newspaper for over 40 years in
Wow.
North Carolina, that I am the granddaughter of an unenrolled member of the Lumbee tribe from Lumberton, North Carolina, who had a fifth grade education, that I'm an auntie, a rich auntie to my my nibblings.
We
I'm a
love those rich aunties.
you love the rich aunties. I'm a sister, and I'm also a late bloomer, which is a person who has realized that their queer identity late in life. And so I think it's really important that we talk about ourselves like that, and that you feel free to bring all your identities into the space and into your leadership. And I would say that the things that I've really learned is that you don't have to have a separate leadership personality. I think early on in my career, I thought that's what I had to do. I thought, I got to, this parts of me don't feel professional. So when I go into work, I like close those parts off and I show up as this. But
Mhm.
as I started to merge those things together, it was wild, the reception. More doors opened up, more people felt connected to me. They felt drawn to me. They felt like they trusted the things that I was saying. And so it's only been like in the last maybe 3 years, actually, where I have really felt very competent to bring all of who I am into the one place, and then that's what you get no matter what the environment is. So that was a really long answer.
Mm.
I hope I answered
Nah, you know what you've done,
somewhere
and
in
I
there.
appreciate that. I appreciate the long answer, Khalilah, for a number of reasons. The first reason is because when you give yourself space, you make space for others. You know, the
Mhm.
fact that you said I want to introduce with everything that I am, right? Not my titles, not my roles,
Mhm.
but everything that I am. What makes me me? My
Mhm.
experiences, my beliefs, my preferences, all of that. And when
Mhm.
you bring that, you make room for others to bring that. And what happens? We stop
Yep.
being robotic. You
Yep.
know, when someone says lead with professionalism or and all this other stuff, I always ask them, well, what is being professional?
Yeah.
Because I like to think that I'm a professional person, but I'm also
Correct.
an energetic person. You know, I'm a black man from poverty. I'm from the hood of Rochester, New York. You know, I've been in the military. I've faced death. I've had all these experiences, and I want to bring them all because that
Yep.
is really what's going to make that when people think of authentic leaders. To me, being an authentic leader is being able to show up with all those experiences so you can
Yep.
make room for other people. So I
Right.
think it's so beautiful that you opened up with that, Khalilah, because
Yeah.
if we are to talk about leading as ourselves, then we need to be transparent about who that is, right? Our
About who,
and then everything are the non-negotiables, who we are, and etc. Right?
yeah, about who we are. And the other one thing other thing that I would add is like getting clear on what your real purpose is in this world, not just for the job that
Mm.
you have, but why were you created? What is going to be your human contribution to this world? And so I had to really start to evaluate all of the things that I engaged in, the activities, jobs, volunteer things that I engaged in. And I started thinking about, like, well, what is common, what's similar about each one of these? Like, why did I want to coach volleyball? you know I enjoyed practice. I enjoyed that, reaching this growing and learning edge, and like seeing people overcome things that they just didn't think they could do. And so there is that through line. Same thing from when I was a teacher. Why did I enjoy teaching? Was I loved seeing people learn new things and then apply them. you know
Yes.
why do I love what I did as when I was an executive director and running YMCA buildings? The parts of that I loved the most was the time I got to spend with my team, understanding like what their goals were for their departments, and the time that I got to spend with my volunteers, where we talked about like this YMCA and its contributions to the community and how it's being a good partner to the community. And so that through line was really just like, I really enjoy supporting and coaching people to realize their dreams and their unrealized dreams. You
That
know,
is so key. And sorry to cut you off. I just wanted people
no, you good.
to know, like, make sure like others caught that. You know, you've identified a through line. And I know a lot of folks, the reason why is because a lot of folks are in transition right now. They're in times of uncertainty and they're like, man, I don't know what I want to do. And if you can
Mm-hmm,
identify that through line, everything you've done, why did you enjoy that? You know, what was important for
mm-hmm,
you to do that? It reminds me of the principle of ikigai, finding your reason for being. Sounds like
yep,
you've done that by identifying that through line. You know, identifying what do you enjoy, what are your strengths, what the world needs, and if you in what the world would pay for. And
mm-hmm,
paying doesn't necessarily mean monetary, right? It could be the time
correct.
spent. So that is such a key point when we're talking about leading as yourself, because it ties to
Mm-hmm,
understanding your values first, right? And if you
yep,
can't identify
yep.
that, it's going to be hard for you to feel like you have a purpose or identify what the next steps are you need to take.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that about values, is that's a practice that I've started this year to really get clear on what my personal values were.
Hmm.
And it was really eye opening because there were some values that I thought were values, but as I started to read the definitions of them and just get a greater understanding of like, what exactly does this word mean? I realized like, that's not my value proposition. It's a different value that I have that can be used kind of with this. So I give you an example. So I was starting this process of like, what's my top 5 values? And so I had empathy as one of the values. And I looked up the definition, and it said, among other things of like being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, the definition also said thinking less of yourself. And I was like, I don't think less of myself. Like, I think I'm
What
dope.
was that definition?
You
Because I
know?
don't think of that as
I was
empathy at
like,
all.
I don't think less of myself. And so as I started to dive deeper, what I came upon was the real value was open-mindedness and the ability to see many different perspectives and be open to different perspectives. And for me, empathy was like, I can see your situation, and that's a value proposition to me. But empathy was not the right word. It was
Ah,
open-mindedness was the right
interesting.
word. And so, you do need to identify your values, but I would just offer up and encourage people to like check in on your definitions of the words you're ascribing as your values and do some more work if that definition doesn't exactly connect to what is your value.
Absolutely, and I also want to say that we can define it ourselves, because it
Correct.
was interesting that you found that definition of empathy. I'm like, where's that? Because for me, empathy starts with me. Right? I need to be empathetic to self to be open to others,
Yep.
and be able to understand and feel them. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's my definition of empathy. Is like, hey, being kind to yourself and being willing to listen and be curious so that
Yep.
then I can be open to others' emotions and feelings and experiences.
Absolutely.
Because so I love that you mentioned that. And Ralph, I'm so glad that you're finding value in our conversation. We have some
Oh
comments on the
yeah.
side here. Folks are commenting from YouTube and LinkedIn and
Nice.
Facebook.
Hi
So
everybody.
yeah, yeah. Hello to all that are watching. It's about 2,600 folks right now. So
No, it's not.
I promise you, Khalilah. So
I
hey,
love
this is
it.
a hot topic.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
glad that you all find a value in it.
absolutely. So you mentioned something earlier, like you mentioned something about the technical leaders. Like there's emerging leaders who go from being technical in some
Yeah.
capacity to now having to go through the people leadership. So
Mhm.
how do you recommend they start to lead as themselves, jumping from one skill set to this other
Yeah.
skill set?
And I'm only gonna share like how I came into it, and then I'll share what I wish would have happened
Yeah,
and what I did.
that's hey,
Um,
that's how we
so
learn, right?
so step one, I would say is, you are the owner of your leadership journey, your learning journey. If you are sitting around waiting for a supervisor or some other senior leader to like dictate your path, then that's like step one in the wrong direction. So you need to own, what it is that you want to do, and you own your learning around that. I actually lost a job because of what I was doing in the leadership development space. I had a supervisor that was intimidated by that. They eliminated my role. They told me it was radical what I was doing for myself for leadership development. And luckily, in that moment, I was grounded enough to not spiral from that. But what it did was it changed the trajectory of my own leadership. And I said, I'm never going to be a person that restricts access to like development or to dictate and tell someone this is your path. I'm going to be a leader of other leaders that is really curious about my direct reports and like what their goals and desires are, and really like creating pathways for them to get to that. So I would say, first step, you own your learning journey, you own your own leadership development, and don't expect someone to be guiding that process for you. I like to tell people to think about career mapping in a way of like, what's your end destination? Like, what's the retirement role that you see yourself in? And even if you're young in this and you're like, retirement, I'm so far away from that. Trust me, as the person who's like getting closer to the age of it, you aren't that far away from it.
Right,
so,
right.
so you should start thinking about it really soon.
That's a
But
jewel right there.
But think about, if you can't imagine like what am I going to be doing while I'm retiring, just think about like what's the next logical contribution to the world that I want to have, and start doing your own research about that work, what competencies, what skills are needed there, what are the skills that you are best known for. It's really important for that, for you to hold on to those skills. I'm a big believer in the Gallup Strength Finders, in that if we focus in on our strengths versus focusing in on our areas for growth, that's going to overcome that. So I
I'm
really
so
think.
glad you said that. I just want to point that out because I get sick of hearing people say, "Hey, focus on the weakness." I'm like, why? Like, if I'm really, unless it's something that is very, very beneficial and needed that I'm
Mhm.
deficient in, why not just leverage my strengths? That is how we're going to get exponential returns. I can sit here all day and work on weaknesses, but that doesn't mean it's gonna do anything for me.
Yeah, it's like I feel like spend your majority of time leveraging the things that come naturally to you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
I don't think that's too far fetched, but it's true. Like, people will tell you to focus on your weaknesses, but I say focus, on your strengths, and then get about creating your own development plan. Like, what parts of your current job can you leverage to stretch yourselves, give yourself mini stretch assignments. Who needs to know about your career goals and aspirations, your job goals and aspirations. I'm a big proponent of having a personal board of directors. Just like any other organization or business, they have a board of managers, a board of directors that advise them, and they all have different roles. And so I have that too. I have truth teller, I have a cheerleader, I have a sponsor, I have a person who's a coach, I have a person who's a mentor, and they all know what their roles are. And so when I'm coming to them with different conversations or decisions that need to be made, they know what kind of feedback that I'm looking for them. So many times we'll say, "Oh yeah, I have a network of people who support me," but do they know that that's
They
how
don't
you are
know.
trying to tap into?
Right. They don't even know.
Like, does this person know that you see them as the truth teller? I think it's important for them to know that. So
Right.
get you a personal board of directors that can help you, through like your career aspirations, and then just get about the business of doing it. you
Real
know
quick, is there a cadence that you meet with your board of directors or board of advisors?
The, no, I don't have a regular like meetings with them or anything
Hmm.
like that. These are folks that have been along my side for decades at this point. Decades at this point. And so they just know, I reach out to them. A person who's a mentor for me, I'll reach out to her and say, "Hey, I need some mentoring advice. I'm challenged through this," and we'll set up time, and we'll talk through things, and she will ask me the tough questions and things like that. I mostly engage my truth teller a lot, because I'm like, am I being crazy about this? And
Yes.
you know
You gotta have one of them, like, and that's for me. It's my wife, because she'll tell me like, "Hey, did you think about this?"
yeah, for me it's my partner. She definitely grounds me, when I'm spiraling in my narratives that I tell myself. She's like, "Well, what about this? Remember that you have access to this, and that this could also be a possibility."
And this is good also because when we think of leading as ourselves, sometimes you need another person to be that mirror. Because you can't know, even though it's you, right? There are some blind spots that we have about ourselves, or some tendencies we typically lean into that need to be challenged. So I love that you're
Mhm.
mentioning having others, that 360 degrees of support, as I call it, to
Yep.
ensure that we are showing up, not just leading as ourselves, but the best version of ourselves.
Yep.
And that
Yep.
takes being challenged. So I love this.
Yeah. And I think, like, when you are going from individual contributor to like leading other leaders,
Mhm.
there's not a lot of supports for that. So the other part of like bringing your authentic self is understanding who you are. So I like a lot of assessments. I've taken a lot of them over the years, but it's the information that comes back from that assessment where you can understand, how you think you show up and how people perceive you. There's quite a few assessments that can give you that kind of feedback.
Mhm.
And to me, it's not about like stopping something. It is, or like quieting part of who you are. It's about recognizing how certain parts of your personality and can impact other people. And it's all about building relationships and collaboration, and bridging that gap of like, you know, I understand how this may be, you may be perceiving this. And so I'm going to lead with whatever I need to facilitate us having a conversation. So
Yeah.
I just got certified to deliver the Hogan assessment, and it's an assessment that it's 4 categories, but it's around like what you're naturally inclined to do, what motivates you and your values, but then also it gives you some of your strengths that can present themselves as derailers, and gives you a little bit of coaching around how you can be more aware of those things.
Yeah, and that's key. And I love the Hogan assessment, by the way.
Yeah.
And you know what you said, like that was empathy to me. Is like, hey, how I understand how you might be feeling this. So I'm glad we're talking about this too, because a lot of folks listening to this, they might be like, well, when I thought you were going to talk about as leading as yourself, is just that's just the way I am, and take it. But that's not what we're talking about at all,
No.
because so this is something that a lot of folks, especially stepping into or already being in a leadership position, we kind of fall. I talked about those tendencies. We kind of believe that, hey, this is just how I am, especially as you get further along in your career, for example. So I like that you're talking about being flexible and being able to adjust, and understanding that our way is not necessarily always the best way.
Yep.
And that open-mindedness you mentioned as your value is going to be key as we learn to lead as ourselves and evolve as leaders.
Yeah, no, that 1,000%. And I'll give you an example of when your strengths are working against you. Early on in my leadership journey, I had the opportunity to take the Gallup Strength Finders, and for about 2 years, command was the number one strength of mine. It kept showing up in my top 5. It showed up in the one for 1 year, and I think it was like 3 for another year. But I was not leveraging it as a strength. It was
Hmm.
becoming a point of contention for the people that I was leading. And so I was in an organization. Luckily, we had a person who was in a role that could give us some coaching around our strengths. And so they helped me really understand more about command as a strength and the parts of it that served me best, and how it might be showing up in the ways that like is not serving me, and it's not how I want to be showing up with that strength of command. And consequently, I've taken the strength finders about 4 more times, and command has not shown up in my top 5 since then.
Interesting.
So it's really interesting when you get those top 5 and you're like, I could have just said, well, command is just who I am. Like, I want to tell people what to do. I'm the leader, but I wanted, there was a certain way that I wanted to my command strength to show up. I wanted to be caring. I wanted people to recognize that I cared about them, and I can still hold you accountable and care about you. And so I learned how to do that in a way that meshed better with the rest of my strengths. And then,
Yeah.
magically, command just fell off, and it wasn't a strength that I really, really needed to leverage in my leadership anymore.
Wow, the power of awareness. That is like the fact that you're like, okay, command, and then being able to get the feedback from the folks that were experiencing your command, so to speak, and being able to
Mhm.
say, okay, this is not how I want to be. This is not the legacy I want to be known for,
Yeah.
so to
Yeah,
speak.
because that
This is
nothing bothers me more when I've met with people who they've just said, "This is just who I am." And I
ah,
go, "Well, how do you like that? Like,
yeah,
is that okay with you?" And folks have to really sit with that. There was a coach that was when I was a master coach. There was a coach in my club, and the other coaches would always talk so poorly about her coaching ability. They would
mm,
never tell her. And when I
ah,
became the master coach for these younger coaches, I just went to her and I said, "Hey, this is what people are saying about you and about your coaching. Like, what do you want to do with it?" And she looked me in the face and she said, "But that's not who I am." And I said, "I know that because I've seen you. We've practiced together. I've seen you coach at tournaments. Like, I know that's not you." And so she said, "I don't want to show up that way. Like, what do I need to do?" So I coached her, and now she's like the lead of that age group at a different club. Like, she is running the show, and she totally 180 her reputation as a
mm,
coach in that area. But imagine if I had gone to her and she was not open to receiving that feedback, and she would have been like, "Well, this is who I am, deal with it." There was something inside of her that said, that what people are saying is not what I am. How
right.
do I show people who I really am in this space? She was open to that.
Absolutely, and sometimes, and we could probably talk about this for hours, and but I know we're winding down. But one of the things I want people to take with them as we wind this conversation down, based on that, is the power of open mindedness, but also the power of exploration. To say, okay, why am I showing up that way when I don't want to? What do I need
Correct.
to change? Because that's an important component of what we're talking about here, leading as yourself. Like, that's not what I thought people were experiencing, but why is this their experience? And we have to be willing
Yeah,
to confront ourselves with those tough questions and tough asks.
we
So,
absolutely
man,
do.
Khalilah, this has been a phenomenal
I
conversation.
know. I
Uh,
just want to leave. I just want to leave everybody with this quote. This is a quote that dramatically changed how I viewed my leadership. It's from Dr. Maya Angelou. She said, people will forget what you say, and people may forget what you do, but they will never forget how you made them feel.
mhm.
And when I was in a very critical place of like, should I even be, an executive director and leading other people, I had to look myself in the mirror and say, you know what? I do care how people feel. And so that's the part that I'm going to hone in on with anyone that I am fortunate enough to lead and to be a colleague of. I care about how people feel more than what I say and what I do. And so that is going to be, in front of my all of the engagements of just how I interact with people. So you got to know that for yourself.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for all the wisdom and the knowledge and the energy you brought, because everyone knows I love good energy.
Yeah.
So, before we conclude, how can people connect with you?
Sure. So people can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. You see my name there. You can also email me at KP Connects. It's KAYPEA Connects at gmail.com. I do a lot of workshops and facilitations leveraging the Lego series play methodology, which I love. So I'd love to help create something for you. But those are the two ways that you can find me. I have a lot of folks on LinkedIn and pretty active on there. So I would love to connect with anyone who enjoyed this conversation and wants to talk more about it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
if you are not connected with me, again, I am Jevon Wooden. You could find me at jevonwooden.com. Check out my YouTube channel. Check out me on LinkedIn. Connect. Let me know what your thoughts are on leading as yourself. And remember, until next time, to keep ascending. We'll see you soon.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Javon.